Welcome back to Get Down to Business. Today we are talking all about navigating the often turbulent waters of business growth. We're diving deep into the essential tools and strategies needed to successfully transition your venture from a budding idea all the way to a thriving enterprise. Our guide for this journey is Pat Alacqua, a seasoned business growth strategist who has not only built successful businesses himself, but has also helped countless others achieve exponential growth. He's the founder of the Entrepreneur to Enterprise program and the author of the brand new book, Obstacles to Opportunity, Transforming Business Challenges into Triumph, Stories and Strategies from Leaders who've mastered it. It officially launches literally any day now. Pat, welcome to the show. It's fantastic to have you here. Your work focuses on the distinct growth phases every business goes through. What inspired you to write Obstacles to Opportunity and highlight those interconnected challenges now?
Hi, Shalom. Thanks. I appreciate you having me. I've been looking forward to this. I think, the reason I wrote the book is that I look at leaders, and including myself in the past, that, they're typically not stuck from lack of effort. They're stuck trying to solve new problems with old thinking. And I kept seeing smart, hardworking people chasing symptoms, managing chaos, and feeling like growth just made things harder. That's why I wrote the book, to help them move through challenges faster. It blends stories with practical tools, including the ones I've used myself. And I learned all this the hard way. When my businesses were growing fast, the success was real, but so was the strain. We had to rebuild how we led, how we made decisions, and how we scaled. I realized that, growth requires you to think differently, plan differently, and execute differently. That what got you there is not necessarily going to get you to where you want to go, right? So, so this book it's really about turning challenges into your advantage and accelerating them, not trying to work around them, but getting through them.
Well, Pat, you've identified 5 distinct phases in the entrepreneur to enterprise pathway. Can you walk our listeners through these stages and shed light on why leaders often find themselves getting stuck as they try to progress?
Absolutely. The 5 predictable phases I would say that I talk to leaders about is, you start at that idea phase. Then you say, okay, I'm going to build that into an entrepreneurial venture. Then you start up. Then you move through growth, and you in that early stage of startup, you sort of you hope to have a proven business, right? And then Shalom, ultimately you want to get to that sustainable enterprise. But each stage demands a new way of thinking, planning, and leading. So, what worked before, as I said earlier, can actually slow you down later or at each of these stages. So many leaders get stuck trying to scale hustle. It leads to confusion, delays, and sometimes even burnout. And what I call trying to scale the chaos. You'll hear things like, I can't keep doing it all. That's a signal. It's time to shift. And one big fix is to define roles and define how decisions are made in the organization. In early phases, everyone does everything, right? But at scale, roles and decisions must be clear. And a lot of people at those early stages feel like that kind of stuff will build the bureaucracy. But it's not red tape. It's what lets people move faster without bottlenecks. And when you look for the warning signs, there are things that are like, things take longer, growth stalls despite effort, and team conflict rises, not from bad people, but from unclear structure and process. And if you don't evolve how you lead at these different stages and just think, what's been working might still work, why change? You got to evolve, because how you end up scaling dysfunction instead of results.
Absolutely. Pat, your book features stories and strategies from leaders who have successfully navigated many hurdles. Why do you believe it's so important for leadership development to occur within the context of real-world experiences and the collective wisdom of others?
Great question, Shalom. I think business, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It's real growth happens under pressure when you're solving real problems with real consequences. So I see what's most important for leaders is there is embedding their development into execution. A great example of that is C.J. Stewart, whose story opens my book. He wrote the foreword, and I'm thankful for that. He wasn't missing a skill. He was missing clarity and conviction. He was working through what I call my 3Cs process in real time, and we helped him transform his leadership. Because I look at it like, there's a difference between leadership development and leadership transformation. Workshops alone don't drive transformation, right? They give you ideas, but there's no urgency to apply them. So, leadership growth happens on the job in the midst of overcoming challenges. So when the job is the training, that old term on the job training, development really sticks. You know it's working when leaders start thinking more clearly, communicating with intention, and leading forward, not just in theory, but in transformation. And I think there's a time and place for development in the classroom, in the workshops. There's a lot of great leadership development out there, but I really believe that the leadership transformation takes place when you have the opportunity to work through real challenges, and you have peers, mentors, people you can turn to help you when you face something or an obstacle you got to get around, because it's real time. It's not walking out of a workshop and say, now let me go try to figure this out.
Absolutely. Pat Alacqua, I really appreciate all that you've been sharing. We're going to be back with Pat in a moment. He's the author of a new book, Obstacles to Opportunity, Transforming Business Challenges into Triumph, Stories and Strategies from Leaders Who've Mastered It. We'll be right back in just a moment. Don't touch that dial. Hey, welcome back. I'm chatting with the true leader, Pat Alacqua. He's the author of Obstacles to Opportunity, and we've been learning so much from Pat. Pat, can you share an example of a leader story from your book, Obstacles to Opportunity, that particularly resonates with you and offers a valuable lesson for our listeners?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Shalom. Thank you. There's many of them in there, and one, I guess, that I find is universal as you go through those 5 phases that we talked about earlier of the entrepreneur to enterprise pathway. And it's one that I struggled with, so it could be my story. And it was stories, in and out of the stories of other leaders, where it's going from that doer to that leader. It's one of the hardest shifts, right? And what I find is everyone talks about the systems of management and leadership, right? The MBO systems, they talk about all these philosophies, and all of those are important, but it's mostly mental making that transition. You can find your way with those systems. And as a doer, your value comes from execution. As a leader, it comes from building something through others, right? So I see 3 mindset traps that trip people up, and it tripped me up in my early years. And it's, you're tying your worth, your self-worth to what you're doing. You're holding on to control. I mean, I was a control freak back in the day. I'm still a control freak, but I sort of manage that, in the things that I do today. And people we all need this at some level. They need approval or they need validation when making tough decisions. And these psychological things typically stand in the way of making that transition and stand in the way of implementing those systems. So to move forward, you have to let go of task ownership and step into outcome ownership. Trust isn't hope. It's about building the systems, yes, but it's the clarity on roles and decision rights, yes, and it's letting go and backing off so that you can design and look forward. But at the core of that is overcoming the mental issues of the shift from doer to manager or leader. And that's where the real impact begins. And I think it's a universal issue that I think every leader makes that transition from one that's more of a blend of entrepreneurism and professional management.
And Pat, I do want to squeeze in something that I know I hear from our listeners all the time, that many entrepreneurs do struggle with the transition from being that hands-on doer to becoming a strategic leader. What advice do you have for those making that significant leap in their career and within their growing companies?
The big thing that I see is, first, those 3 things I just mentioned, be conscious of those, right? Because we have to manage that inner game, right? And even have a mentor that will help you see your way through those things. But then the other thing is, we're always focused on and we're taught to have all the answers in business, Shalom, right? And as we all move through that progression from that doer into leadership, it's really more about asking the right questions. So really learn how to step back and think about the question that you can ask yourself or your team. And that little bit of reflection, and at the same time thinking about those psychological inner game issues that you may be working through, you'll find your way. Instead of jumping into the solution and jumping into the doer role, you can step back and say, hey, I got a team here. What questions do I need to ask so that they can take some ownership and be with me, because I don't have to do this alone?
Well, Pat, I do want our listeners to be doers in one sense. I do want our listeners to find obstacles to opportunity and get in touch with you. How can they do that?
It is, I guess the best way is through my website at patalacqua.com. You'll find more about the book there. There's a lot of free tools, some online courses and master classes and ways to work, how we can work together. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm there regularly. I love just connecting. And of course, the book is available on Amazon and shortly on Barnes & Noble. But I just love to meet people that are leading or that are entrepreneurs. And there's nothing I enjoy more than having a conversation and talking about common challenges.
Pat Alacqua, thank you so much. That's a wrap for us this week on Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Get on my website, syklein.com. To success, let's get down to business.